I'm seeing a lot of internet chatter this weekend that my home city, that's Twin Falls, Idaho. I broadcast at News Radio 1310 KLIX in Idaho. That the city council tomorrow is going to have some discussion about a mask mandate. This has been big news and brewing for a couple of weeks, and our governor as well. I predicted in a blog post last week at our website, newsradio1310.com, our governor would be waiting until after Election Day because some Republicans might have a tough time at the polls with some voters who are still what you might call constitutionalist, very libertarian, but that after Election Day, he might have free reign to feel he can go forward and impose a statewide mandate because we've had a spike in cases over the last few weeks. National news has been all over that story because we're a primarily rural state and a very much red state, and they're trying to portray us as all being science deniers. I got nothing against science. I will point out that when it comes to what I believe in, though, generally I put Christ first, and then science comes next. I think what happens with a great many people in media. Well, at Old Monsignor, one time I was at a daily mass about 15 years ago. He said that most newspaper people don't go to church, so they really don't have any idea about what we're talking about. And then he ended up going into the hospital for a routine procedure, and the scientists there killed him with a staph infection in a matter of a few days. Just saying. Anyhow, there's this discussion going on about a mask mandate, and it is going to be controversial no matter how you look at it. I just came across a piece over the weekend, and it comes from, well, it's Ron Paul Institute. Some of you remember Ron Paul. And it's written by a guy by the name of Daniel Horowitz, very conservative to libertarian style writer. And it says Danish newspaper reveals largest study on masks has been rejected by 3 medical journals. Why not just conduct, the writer says, a randomized controlled trial to test whether masks work against COVID-19? Why assume such a draconian and dehumanizing mandate works as if it's an article of faith and create such division when we can discover which side is correct? According to one Danish paper, the study has been rejected by 3 journals because the results are too controversial. Goes on to say the oldest newspaper in Denmark is reporting this, but there are no details of what's in the study other than to say a guy by the name of Dr. Andrew Bostom, he's at Brown University, that's in New England. He has been seeing what the details are, and he says there's an outstanding sample, but it doesn't hint as to what the result happens to be. In other words, there are people in media who do not want you to know that it may not actually make any difference whatsoever. Why is that? Well, let me tell you a little story. A historian and I were talking one time, and the historian said that back in World War II, you had rubber drives and you had tin drives, you had metal drives. Americans here on the home front were collecting incredible amounts of materials with the idea that it would be recycled for the war effort. But he says they later discovered that much of what was collected never actually made it into any of the war production. However, Franklin Roosevelt realized if you wanted to get the people on the home front behind the war, which is going to be long and brutal, you had to give them an impression that they were part of it, that they were helping out. So it was more marketing than it was actually any. And this is what I think about mask mandates. It's to try to get people on board with what the governments are doing. Because if you don't have people out there walking around with masks, then they may feel they don't have any skin in the game. Then they might start asking questions. Hey, what's this really all about? And that gets me to a video I happened to see this morning. There's a channel on YouTube featuring lectures and speeches and interviews with the Canadian Jordan Peterson, who I believe is a psychiatrist, but he has a wide array of things that he talks about. And he was reflecting in a video that was recorded 3 years ago. That after 9/11, he said that the response to 9/11 by Western governments in the long run cost us more than any of the damage from 9/11. He says, just look at what happened in airports when you walk into an airport. And he referred to airports as becoming centers of fascism. Now, he's a conservative in his views, but he calls airports centers of fascism. And we gave up a lot in the way of liberties. There are people who are collecting data from you all over the map. There's this thing up in the sky called Echelon collecting data. And we live with this because we've traded liberty for security. Let me just say this. I have interviewed people in the past, some of them who were hostages in Beirut and others at the American embassy in Tehran. And some of these people actually endured various measures of torture. Tyranny is not always a guy hanging on a wall in a dungeon waiting for his next torture session. Tyranny can be very soft. And the softer it is, generally, you don't notice that it's closing in all over you. I hope that we can keep our heads on about all of this. I'm not necessarily denying masks, that they may work. I realize if you are a civil libertarian, though, you would favor evidence that would say that they're useless. And if you're someone who believes that the government needs to stop your neighbor from doing something you don't like, you would favor the use of masks and any research that backs up the use of masks. And that's where we happen to be today. Since we don't have civics education in many places any longer, and you don't have a lot of critical thinking being taught, this is the result. If you like our videos, click on the subscribe button at the top of the page, and you can also leave me comments in the comments section below. My name is Bill Colley, and I'm joined often by my friend Jake Smith as well for Boardwalk Potatoes.